And Peyton, do you have Melvin's contact? Like, do we know when we're live? You're muted.
There's a countdown on like 25 seconds going now to live. Oh, amazing. We are live. Cool.
Well, welcome everyone to tonight's Wet'suwet'en teach-in hosted by ASFA Concordia in collaboration with QPIRG Concordia's Disorientation Series, as well as the Concordia Student Union and Sustainable Concordia. We'd like to begin by acknowledging that Concordia University is located on the unceded Indigenous lands of the Kanien'kehá:ka Nation. The Kanien'kehá:ka Nation is recognized as the custodians of the lands and the waters that we are remotely hosting this panel from tonight, or rather this teach-in from tonight. Tiohtià:ke, or Montreal, is historically known as the gathering place for many First Nations. And now for tonight's teach-in. On December 2019, The Guardian published an exclusive highlighting that the RCMP were ready to shoot unarmed Wet'suwet'en land defenders who refused to leave their Yintah, or land, to make way for the Coastal Gas liquid natural gas pipeline. Young people across so-called Canada and around the world mobilized in support of the Wet'suwet'en Hereditary Chiefs and their resistance to colonial violence and fossil fuel extraction. Our speaker today is Marlene Hale, a Wet'suwet'en elder, activist, chef, and educator. Born at the foot of the Hudson Bay Mountains in Smithers, BC, she has lived in Tiohtià:ke, Montreal, since 2012 and works to bring attention to the Wet'suwet'en's fight for sovereignty. Without further ado, here's Marlene Hale.
Thank you so much, Gao, and good evening, everyone. My name is Marlene Hale, and I am from the Wet'suwet'en Nation. It says, Skyze, Denise, Zakuze. Ladies and gentlemen, and distinguished guests, all of you. My name is Marlene Hale, and I am from the Wet'suwet'en Nation. Bonjour, comment ça va? C'est mon nom est Marlene. Je suis à partir de Colombie-Britannique Nord, une petite ville nommée Smithers. Mon peuple, la Wet'suwet'en Nation. As we all know that when I speak, I usually allow my drum to speak for me. And it's something that I carry very dear to me, with me, and also my infamous feather, which is an eagle feather. And when you are presented with an eagle feather, as we all know, it's a big honor. I was given to this at a talk that I was doing at a fundraiser in Toronto, and I was just very elated. And during the COVID, I got to do my first part, and I made sure I beaded it really well. I'm going to drum you in now. Like the heartbeat of Mother Earth. Recite. I would like to welcome you all to the show tonight, and I'm going to start with, I think that we totally all know that going back on January the 6th, 2019, and this was the day before the invasion happened at Gidimt'en on our people, when the Coastal GasLink, as we know, is the biggest $67 billion corporation, put an injunction onto the Wet'suwet'en Nation to put a pipeline through, 750 kilometer pipeline through our territory. And as of that day, I think that when that transpired, Gidimt'en, which is one of the 5 clans, was the first one that, when 14 people were arrested. When they were arrested, they were brought to, driven 4 hours away from Smithers, BC, and were let go, but they had to still appear in court. And this has been the atrocity of our people when that happened, because it has happened 2 years in a row when they wanted to put the injunctions both onto the Gidimt'en Nation and also the Unistoten, which we know is today what has transpired of this year. And when it took down the matriarchs there, went right in the middle of when they were doing a ceremony. And going back to 2019, I remember that day very vividly. One of my 7 sisters, her name is Charlotte. We've been on a daily call way before this all transpired, many times when she would be calling me in distress that so many things were happening up at home, and they were looking to push us out of our territory, which was just, I could not fathom what she was talking about until the day before, on the 6th of January 2019. She lives across a big hotel in Smithers, and she was in tears, and she said that there's a big bus. On this bus was over 250 policemen were there. There were 7 cars behind it, and they were going to be on their way to get them down. I could not believe my ears when she said the numbers. When I also knew that the day before up at Gidimt'en, the chiefs and some of the chiefs and women, children were up there. They were drumming and singing and having a wonderful time, like they always do up there. And they got the call that that they were on their way. I said to my sister, I just hoped that they had removed the children and the elders, and they did. The day after that, we totally know what had transpired. You could see one car after another for miles of policemen going in to take down the barriers at Gidimt'en, where Molly Wickham had held herself and all the supporters for the Unistoten, Wet'suwet'en, Gidimt'en people. It was a hard year, and when the very next day, January the 8th, in Montreal here, NI Quebec and many other organizations had come very quickly and put in their support and solidarity to the Wet'suwet'en Nation. I was catering that day for Dawson College, and I was given a phone call to go speak there, and I was just shocked to hear that how fast this had gotten together. And so I got another chef to come with me to my catering, and I brought in the food and mentioned to the organizers that I would have another chef serving them. And they were fine with it, that I had to go do this talk. It was something that was very important to me. So with my drum, I went there. I did not realize the amount of media that was already there waiting, and also the crowd, how big the crowd was the very first day. And when I spoke, one of the media, which was APTN, Aboriginal Television Network, had asked me a question, was, what would I say to the Prime Minister today? That day I mentioned to him, and still do, that he really let our people down. And he was talking at that time, way before, on reconciliation with Indigenous people all across the map. And when this came, I was just so shocked that I still cannot believe that the atrocities today has gotten into what we call genocide on our people. it was a hard year, 2019, a long year. And immediately we went right into work. I along with just catering, teaching, cooking culture, with my catering and stuff that I do normally, I have started becoming an activist because something needed to be done. And also in Montreal, what we have here, other than all other parts of British Columbia, all the way to all across Canada, is we have a lot of media, but one of the things the most important that we have here is we have students. We know in 2012, the numbers of you that can go out, and when you have something to say, you hit the streets, and the protesting started immediately. I started appearing at almost every one of them. I was doing up to 3 events a day. And in February of 2019, I got to address the Prime Minister of Canada, Mr. Trudeau, and Justin was in doing his usual talks, touring Canada on town hall meetings. He was, first of all, in Sherbrooke, and I was told about that, so immediately NIE Quebec and other organizations had organized for me to drive to Sherbrooke and announce to the Prime Minister many things that I was prepared to ask him, but they did not allow me in. So I didn't get a chance to speak to Mr. Trudeau at that time, the Prime Minister. So we quickly drove back to Montreal that night, and we found out that the next town meeting what he would have would be in St. Hyacinthe, Quebec. So we headed there again the very next day, and we got registered without them knowing my face or anything, so that I would have no issues of getting in. I did get in. And during that night, it was not an easy night because I sat in the wrong section. I sat in a section which was pretty much the last section. I could see how he was doing it, going to 5 different sections, and there was a lot of media there. It was getting late that night. It was 9:30, and it was getting to be about 20 to 10, and I thought, oh my God, I'll never get my chance. Suddenly, he pointed away from this lady trying to get her to stop talking or whatever, and he pointed around, and I immediately stood up, and he allowed me to that. So I addressed him with many questions, but the biggest question was on consent. Number 1, who did you get the consent from? Was it from the band council chiefs versus who you should be getting it from is the hereditary chiefs? The other one, the issue was the RCMP. Who gave them the word to go in and commit these atrocities on our people with the most violent arrests I have ever conquered in my life to see on any people who are just on their own property? He stood up, and he was sitting at that time, and I was very respectful how respectful he was. And in the audience was about 20 of the yellow vests, as we know the group. And they were heckling everybody, but before I started, he started talking to me. He mentioned to them that in French that I was from the Wet'suwet'en Nation, to be respectful. And they did not heckle me. So I continued speaking, and on behalf of our chiefs, and he sort of danced around everything that I was asking him. It really sort of angered me, but I just did it very diligently, very quietly, and got the point across to him on our people and reconciliation at that time. And also the due diligence of having RCMP, oh my goodness, of what they are doing and getting away with, how viciously they accost our people, and when they're arresting them. Not only just our people, the journalists, and how they blacked us out from the world getting to know what was going on. They really controlled our little town of Smithers. Anytime they controlled it, so the fact that they had every hotel booked, every restaurant was feeding them, and the airlines was just packed just for their sake and no one else's. When this all happened, there was many things like Frida Houston, as we know, of the Unistoten camp, had gone in about the 27th of September of 2019 to speak at the United Nations in New York City. She addressed to United Nations to appeal to have them remove the RCMP, have them remove the CGL, Coastal GasLink, and have them understand that this is genocide on our people. They could not believe the word genocide. They would not accept it. They also would not have anything to do with it, and it is exactly what it is. It is totally genocide on our people. It is not the first appeal to the United Nations of Indigenous people. And every time it did, it just went on to deaf ears, where it escalated so much in that year, where the protests got Canada-wide, got bigger and bigger. Myself, I live in Montreal, as we know. I'm a chef by trade. I started doing a lot of work with many organizations, climate action. There is just a multitude of them. I started speaking on media, radio, everything that I could get a hold of. McGill University was one of the biggest ones that helped me out, get the story out to the world by dealing with some of the biggest newspapers, the Guardian newspaper, and many ones like it, where they've got 47 million viewers. And it was one of the ways that we could get the story out, was dealing with the Guardian newspaper when we started seeing stories of the Wet'suwet'en Nation much further away from Canada. Then it hit Britain, and now we know it is worldwide. Then on 23rd of the 23rd of September of last year, which is almost the anniversary date, I myself went to Panama City and met with 23 different countries of the Latin Americas and over, speaking of all of the same issues that Indigenous people worldwide are going through, the same thing as we do, how they handle it, what happens to their country, their people, their land, and where are they today. And some of the countries, as we know, Brazil, Colombia, Mexico, and other countries where people are activists, we're quite lucky. We're still safe as being an activist for feeding and fighting for our own people. There, they get killed. I was speaking at many occasions where I've spoken with a lady from Colombia and another one from Brazil who is an activist. I spoke with her in Ottawa. When I went to Panama City, I was excited in the sense that I would be meeting these ladies again, once again. I would be really happy to have seen them. After 3 days, I didn't run into them. I was asked the organizers, I had pictures with them. I said, where are these ladies? They should be here. And they didn't answer me until maybe the 5th day, and they brought me aside, and they had mentioned that they are not with us today. The one in Colombia, she was pushed off her roof. She's no longer with us. The other one from Colombia was killed also. I was so saddened by that. I drummed every night for them. I lit a candle for them. I could not understand a person just going out and caring for your entire country. Why would they do this to a soul working so hard just for what belongs to them? But this is what extraction does. what big organizations, big companies, $67 billion corporations can get away with. And they today, it still continues. And there's still no result as far as action taken on our behalfs. It is now a full 2 years. The anniversary came up in January when they also went and went to Unistoten. And we all know that when that happened, they took down the matriarchs in the middle of a ceremony. At that time, Frida Houston of the Unistoten was the last one that they had. They had the RCMP. It took them almost a day and a half to plow their way through 6 feet of snow to get up to Unistoten. They only went about a half a mile, not even that, an hour, and it was 44 miles that they had to go through. It was very, very tense for us watching this. It was very tense watching how everybody was, of our people, how things were doing and how everyone was doing. We were very worried about our hereditary chiefs, our matriarchs, the families, and also with that being said, it was almost, don't forget, we're looking at -30. And still up to today, the way they had gone in, and the same thing, they've had so many RCMP for 4 women was appalling, just appalling. These are women, they're matriarchs. Why does it take over 100 RCMP to go in and take them out? The day that happened and they took Frida Houston out, we all saw the images of when they took her drum and they just jeered at it. And also she was in the middle of ceremonies. We saw the red dresses. We can remember that image. And not only that, the red dresses meant what they were doing in ceremony was bringing the spirits of the missing and Indigenous women of our territory back to the territory. And she'd been doing this for a couple of days, and there was 6 RCMP. They had taken the other women, but nobody had touched Frida yet. And they were all talking as if she wasn't present at all, asking each other to, you take her, you go get her. I'm not going to go get her. I'm not going to touch her. And it was just, it was insane of how they did this. And they made the women sit in their vehicles for a long, long time, and it was very cold. They didn't bring them too far. They brought them only about an hour away in Houston, BC, where they were arrested, and they were also charged, but just put into jail, but they were also just let go. Also, just like the year before, they all went finally into the Supreme Court of Canada, which we know that today, when you do go into the Supreme Court of Canada, it costs a lot of money. And we were working very diligently, very hard on raising funds, because every time you pick up a phone with a lawyer, any little things that you needed, there was 3 different situations. It was over $150,000. For them to take them out, go to court, and with the 14 people arrested the year before, it was $150,000 to start with. It was also monies that Frida Houston this year as well. It was $150,000 to start with. And also with the hereditary chiefs and everything else that they have done with them too, it was just money, money, money all the time with the lawyers. And this year, as we all know, that before Canada shut down was when Frida was taken out. And that's when everybody had just had enough. They had blacked out all the media from all of us to get the word out in Smithers, BC. They controlled our little town. We could not hire a helicopter to go up to Unistoten to see how they were doing. We could not use any of our own media. We could not go to the interior news and put our own stories out. It was all locked down. We were controlled of things that I was doing on Facebook, and I personally was blacked out at that time. So that when this all transpired is when Canada had just had enough and said, shut Canada down. That's exactly what happened, as we know today. The thousands that were on the streets from Victoria, BC, all the way to the other side, all the way to San Francisco, to many cities around the world, in London and Paris, everybody was behind the atrocities that were happening on Indigenous people and the Wet'suwet'en Nation. Today, as we know, the day that the COVID hit, we were quickly put on the back burner and totally forgotten. But it didn't stop our work. It doesn't stop my work. Today, we have gone through many things since then. We've gone through the COVID, George Floyd story, systemic racism. We've gone through solidarity with the elderly, the pandemic failure of our people, our elders. The eldership and the elders of this country have just been horrifically taken care of. They died in the most horrific ways. And then it went from there to defunding the police, which they still get away with harming and killing people and shooting people, beating up elders, beating up Indigenous people. They still get away with it today. And then it has gone from there to the many of the things of how people were dealing with the COVID and many other issues. So therefore, we went into into mental health and wellness of how people were dealing with many, many issues as of today. And then it went from there to us just now trying to sustain all what we have been enduring, and also to deal with anything that comes to us, how to take better care of ourselves, because we don't know what's going to come next. We are now looking into Quebec going into the second wave of COVID, and that leads to many issues that not just with our people, with the weekly webinar that I hold, Marlene Hale's solidarity webinars, and I talk about all these issues all the time, and I'm updating myself all the time, and still with the media, still talking and doing videos. And I will be addressing the Prime Minister again in the very near future. And I think, as we know today, if there is anything that when this comes over, it's still going to be a big fight for our hereditary chiefs. But not only that, we never have to forget that the Mohawk Nation is in solidarity as many other people. But with them in solidarity with us, it gives us the strength hold of knowing two nations who are standing side by side is not going to give in. We will always say no, no matter what happens. And that therefore just told the Canadian government of the existent part of the strength that they are fighting with as the Mohawk Nation, Tyendinaga, Ganawagi, and all the other nations that stood with us all across Canada. It is only just the beginning of what is stemming across this nation as far as extractivism is concerned. They want what's beneath us, and they don't care what it takes to get it. At one time, it says when the United Nations unveiled the truth that the government had said to go in at whatever cost. If you have to kill them, kill them. I'm just appalled by that when I heard and read that. How many of the truths are coming out of this? Prime Minister Trudeau is in a minority government. We have an upcoming elections, and it's going to be in his face again that he has to deal, sitting down and talking to the Indigenous people, to the Indigenous leaders, and also the hereditary chiefs of all the issues that stand around the Indigenous people and the atrocities that is being put onto them under his guidance, I'm sure. Thank you ever so much for listening. I would love to have you ask me questions, and I will let you go. I think we have another speaker, and I will come back and say some more. I know I have things that are live. I think I've got a Melvin that's saying that you would like to make a comment. You go right ahead. But there's one thing that, you know, that in Canada here, with everything that's transpiring, I think that is, you know, somebody is just saying, Sasha, I thank you for being here. I'm grateful to be learning about the ongoing resistance by the Wet'suwet'en. Sasha, thank you much for that. It is the one big word that we do, resistance. And we do have exactly just that, resistance. It's because we have so many things going back us, as we know that it's history. Right now, kids of your age, you're the 8th generation. It's one of the biggest reasons what we have to put on this fight for. Because number one is that the 8th generation is a generation that is going to make a big difference. We're fighting for your future. I would love to have you all have a life just the way I did. Being able to travel, the freedom to do many things all your life, and suddenly everything comes on and is put on hold because of this. And with the pandemic, it makes us even, puts a much more a leash onto us than it ever has been. So I'm thinking that in my mind today, that if we can, you know, if we can today, that the Indigenous kids all across Canada, Montreal, I'm really fortunate because, you know, I started with the McGill kids. I call you you're all my metal troublemakers. Anything we ever need to have done, you talk to a student, organization, and it will get done. It will be said. And that is really important because right now, the students, your voice is important and your presence is important. But right now, with the pandemic the way it is, we have to make sure we do things in a safer manner and looking out for each other, but more making sure you're looking after your own well-being. And if I can say that when many organizations did come out, and NI Quebec was just the #1 for me because it was the first one that I actually met on the 4 days when it's transpired in 2019. From there, as we know, many organizations have come forth all across this nation, and they still stand there for us in solidarity. Just 2 weeks ago, all the artists signed a letter saying they are still in solidarity with the Wet'suwet'en Nation. I had a radio station today call in and call me and just saying that they had listened to a talk that I gave 2 weeks ago. And this talk was all about what this land means to us and our people. And right today, as we know, with the climate action and the environment the way it is going, how many of us really deter and depend on our lands. And with the thing that I mentioned in 2019 was in BC alone, how many salmon stock we are losing. 3 years ago, we used to have 3 million salmon. This year, it's not even that. We don't even have more than 10,000 because of the big mess that they had in the Fraser River, where the salmon spawning was hampered with. It was just horrible. This year, we are right down to almost nothing. I was sent a picture today of a grizzly bear who was just skin and bone, and it died. It depends on salmon, and there's no salmon for them this year. That's harsh to see. Our people are always out there, and we're always picking our berries, and we're getting ready for big feasts that's always happening in our feast system. I'm from one of the 5 clans, and that's the Luxiliu clan. And the Luxiliu has been very important for me all my life, ever since I was a child. My name is Chef Malou, And that is a name I've had since I was 6 years old. It was given to me by my mother. And I have been cooking, she said, in the crazy different ways ever since then. And when all of this happened, she said, you were always persistent ever since you were at that age. You talk today, she said, you talk just like your grandmother. Your grandmother used to be like that. She used to travel everywhere and speak to people. Everybody knew her. She said, you always reminded me of that. Before she died, she was 95 years old, a very healthy lady. She never had the diseases that are today there. She never had cancer. She lived on Ladi Mesquite, our traditional tea that we get on the Wet'suwet'en Nation. One of the teas is Hudson Bay tea. Here we call it Labrador tea. And when she was in the hospital, the doctors were saying, why do you give her so much tea? I said, this is what keeps her going every day. She's got her strength and she's got everything with her. And she's very happy to have it. And it's something that we all cherish when we go home. I used to go home every 6 months. And one of the things I did in the summer is go home and do my salmon, pick my berries. And I take a lot of it, I freeze it, and I put it in my suitcase, and I take it back to Quebec, so I have some of home here with me to last me till I go home the next time. Last few seasons, I was able to pick berries up on the territory. My sisters, this year, they did the same thing, but they did it with a little bit of tenseness in them because they did not know who was out in the territory with them. They always had somebody, they always had to go in groups. And it's just one of the ways that we have to do, because there's so many RCMPs still lurking around with assault rifles on our territory. The man camps is something that we've been very worried about for the CGL being up there. The man camps brought in one thing, and it was the COVID, and that's what we were afraid of. And now they did bring in one case, and it's just been hyped up. It was on Facebook. The first thing, it only was on there for no more than about 15 minutes and removed immediately. That's how they can control everything. Our nation has been COVID-free. Today, our hereditary chiefs are just working so hard and trying to deal with the MOU, which is the Memorandum of Understanding, which was written for them with the three governments and signed by the three governments to start a dialogue. And what that means, they start the talks about many issues. And when that happened, it was some kind of hope that we had that there would be something starting to develop. Unfortunately, with the COVID and with the up and coming elections coming up, we are just been told that what we might face is that if it's a new government, other than the ones that signed are the MOU, which is the Memorandum of Understanding, we might have to go right back to square one. I don't know what we're going to do if that happens. Everybody else, just like yourself, myself, we're all just getting burned out from Zoom, our virtual world, and how to just carry on with our daily lives with this COVID over our heads. The big dark cloud that we have, that we try to find different ways to deal with it one day at a time, 1 hour at a time. And as each weeks go by, we are always still talking to each other on the phone. It's 3 hours difference for me to phone to BC, but it doesn't matter. I will still do it, and I will still have all the people that will back me up and be there for me, which is awesome. And I really am grateful for that, having that in Quebec. And also the solidarity, it doesn't matter if we're down in wanting to anything that we want to do, we still have to do it diligently. We're still mindful of the things that we say, whether it's media or just speaking. Always pick your words carefully. Be careful what you say. Anything I say, a lot of times I'm at least heads up with the hereditary chiefs on the phone, talking to them, finding out how they are, where they're at, how they are dealing with certain things, and the issues that are in front of them. They seem to be doing not too badly, considering the pressure that's put onto them. But they have the matriarchs behind them, which is great. And so they all really feel that it's not just them alone. They are finding ways to cope with the amount of work that lays ahead of them. And the other people that are really also with us, the other nations, we know that in Ganawagi, the fire is still burning out there. That means that they will always still be in solidarity with us. They never put that fire out. It's a message to the Canadian government. We're not backing down. And they also will know that, Canada was shut down once. No matter what they say, they have been threatening us through Alberta, saying that if anybody who is in solidarity with us, supporting us, will be charged. Nobody has been charged up to today. They have been arrested, is one thing. Charged, no. So it's not that it just gives us the right to go and do this. We have our voices, and we are allowed to voice our opinions. And you can't take that away from us. You can't take the freedom that we have of speaking. We don't have assault rifles. And as of today, we still just hold very dear to us that we're just peaceful people. And this is our assault rifle, and it always will be. The feather is just what it is. It's peace. It's from an eagle, and the eagle is soaring over us. The spirit of that eagle is with us. Our fight is just the strength of an eagle. That's why we have the feather. And when you're donned with that feather, you've done really good work, and somebody is honoring you for it. I was given this in Toronto at a big fundraiser there. When I was given a talk, it was a very, very great honor for me to receive an eagle feather. Up to today, we are still being hampered by the RCMP, and also the CGL people are still just tearing their way through the Wet'suwet'en Nation. Despite many things that we've gone through, the government, through everybody else, to say even the health department have been just ignoring our calls, our ways of speaking about the CGL being in there at the man camps. And we were very worried on our people if the COVID was to hit there. Their retort to us was, they just really hope we get the COVID, die, and go away. But that's not going to happen. We are the resistant people. Our ancestors have been with us all this time through this journey. They're watching down on us today. My mother, everybody else with her in our history books, watching over us, seeing how we handle things. They're very proud that we are standing up for what they put out for us many, many hundreds of years ago. All of the ancestors. When you hold a hereditary chief's name, as we all know, those names just aren't made up. They're names that go way, way back. To hold a name, you have to be on that land. You have to be on the land for a month, and you have to live on the land. You have to sustain on that land. Then you walk into the feast house and you tell them what you have gone through for that whole month. Then you go through the feast, people each discussing why you're going to get that name. And that today is a huge honor. That means it's a lifetime of work that you have done on your own territory, that you hold a name of a hereditary chief. They're all names that have been given to many, many of their ancestors going back 100 years. They carry on a name, and they still will today. And there is many people that just want to destroy all of what they have done that many years ago, knowing that artifacts are out there, knowing that we live off of that land doesn't mean a thing to them. Knowing that the water is so pristine, and what we are holding today, cherished, the Morris River, which goes right through the Unistoten territory, and where the salmon stock is so huge, it was huge, it's dwindling. What salmon there is left are very small, and they're diseased because of all of the things where the salmon fries start right in the spring. And all through their long journey to the ocean, they suffer so much that people are just putting onto them, and yet they're the food fish of many. Everything, the people to supply on the salmon, we rely on it. The bears rely on it. The eagles eat salmon. Other animals eat salmon to live off of, to get their strength. One after another, they are all suffering. A moose does not know how to jump over a pipeline to get to the other side. So if he's stuck on one side only, they get stressed out. It's many things that we take into factor of what is one thing after another that will just be very difficult for us to battle with in the very future if it doesn't come back at all. The salmon doesn't return. The moose go down, and the elk, everything else. And I would like to know if there's any questions. I would like to talk to you. I love to see some of your faces, and let me hear what you have to say. If there's anything you want to know, please do. I can even teach you my language. Masai. Peyton, do we have any people that want to have any questions? Two days ago, I was talking to a group of people on a Zoom, and what we were talking about was ageism. Ageism is when we are getting to be eldership when we get older. Ageism is very important, and how other people deal with ageism and how it is respected, and what people are going through that today. And when ageism is hindered, like why we go into solidarity with the elderly today, is because the ageism is not being respected, like many, many things. And we need to find ways to address one of the issues at a time, and that's one of the more important ones. Eldership and elders are very important because they carry stories, they carry wisdom, and they also carry strength for the young ones to heed on to when they need to give you strength. My mother always gave me the strength, so did my grandmother. I got it from her. And she was very good at listening. She was also very good at letting us know who was in what territory, what was their name, how each house got their name, where each house is today, and if you're a chief, how you address each house. I am from the house beside the fire, which we call Quinbiach, and I'm one of the 5 clans, and each clan has a house chief, and each house chief is there until is a chief and leads the house until their name is passed on and they gain a hereditary chief's name. The system itself is a very good system. We have it in our Bathlach, what we call in our feast house. And when they go into the feast house now, we all know that in our territory, the people were totally divided because of how things transpired. And the band council and the band chief signing away the 22,000 kilometers of the Wet'suwet'en Nation. It's how we rebuild our nation. These are all my cousins I'm talking about. These are my family. So being even so far home, I still have a lot in me to deal with, and also a lot in me to carry on with what I have today, to carry on the fight for our people. I don't say anything bad about any of my cousins who've done wrong to their people, to our family. I still do what is expected of me as a Laxiliu. And in that, I just listen to the elders. I talk to them, I will go by their guidance. I will make that decision myself, whether I want to say something to someone, but I choose not to. I find it's just too late, it's not worth it. You just have to go on and talk about the things that are more important. And then when you do that, you understand what the reconciliation of not only just with the government, with our own people. To reconcile is one thing, is to forgive. Forgiveness is very hard when it's such a big thing like this at stake. But it's not hard when it's your own heart and everything else that you're talking about. You want to have peace in your mind, peace in your heart. You'll be forever, never forgotten if you just do it the right way, the calm way, instead of lashing out words and lashing out anger at Mr. Trudeau, at the RCMP, at the Coastal GasLink, at any of the people who are racist towards Indigenous people, to the RCMP, the defunding of the RCMP, how much they really want to do that. We still have many things, we still have a lot of work to do, and have to put up keep on our proud hats, keep on a strong shoulder. I've learned through meditation that one thing you do, you have two sides on your shoulder. One is that you carry is positive. The other one is negative. When things are negative, I just learned, as many sort of say, you just flush it. Just let it go. Move on. Move on to something that's more positive, and you'll feel better. Don't put the hate in your heart. Keep it out of there. Don't hate the RCMP for what they're doing. Don't hate what the CGL is doing to your people, the atrocities that are onto you. Don't use the word hate. Try to find some other way to just cope with it, and find a way to seeing what the elders would like us to do and how they handled it many years ago when they went through the same system that when they were 6 years old, they thought they were going to get some education. How wonderful was that? And to find that it was just not the right type of education that was bestowed upon them. Instead, they would have to suffer 20 years dealing with it. And that's what all of them, each of them have, one at a time, carefully just learned to deal with it and learn to just flush the negative out of it and what they have had. And so when that happens and you've got the elders who are working in the system the way they do, you learn to deal with it in the same respectful way. It's called respect, is what they teach you. And in our language, it's called wagoose. And it's one thing I've said to Prime Minister Trudeau. You forgot that word on our people. It's called respect. Hi, Go.
Hi, thank you so much, Marlene. We've come to the question and answer portion of the discussion. So we'll start with some of the resources. Of course, the Unistoten camp has its own supporter toolkit that everyone can find online at unistoten.camp. But I'd like to encourage people to also get involved in local struggles. Are there other resources that you can point folks that are present today, as well as the folks that will listen back to this teach-in, any other resources or ways to get involved, both as settlers and allies?
When a lot of people have, you can go on to the Wet'suwet'en, the office of the Wet'suwet'en, which is in Smithers, BC. It's called the OW office. There you have the hereditary chiefs. And some of the students in Montreal here have chosen to help the chiefs. If you're a researcher in law, if you're a researcher on many issues that we're dealing with in the courts today, this is one of the things that you could do, is helping out our people, is if you're a student And you look into the Office of the Wet'suwet'en, and it's one of the things the matriarchs are doing today. In Montreal, there's a lot of organizations we know online through all over through Quebec, actually, not just Montreal, that you can get involved. And many students have stopped me in the street, how can I get involved? I said, you go to climate action, look for an organization that's dealing with the climate, the environment, and also Indigenous issues. I don't know if I should be naming any, but I know there are so many. And if you grasp onto one, let's say, for example, climate action. It's run by the McGill students. It's also organized by the McGill students. They're the ones that are out there and on the streets and who you see today with the biggest banners and the biggest voice. And you can organize yourself, you can volunteer, and if you need any ways to do it, the best ways is to look into libraries and get to know and read all the Indigenous books that are out there and whether they're updated. And this is one where I just received in the mail just yesterday, and it says More Powerful Together, and it's written by a student of McGill, and her name is Jen Gabi. And she has put together all the words what more powerful together means, just what you're asking me, Gal. How we all do this together, and that's what we are doing, and how the more we gather as a group, the more powerful we become. Shut Canada Down has proved that. The people have been out there in a huge, big force, and from Victoria, all they did was they walked up to a building, and all of a sudden they just formed their own group. And that's what the most powerful students of Victoria were, from the University of UVic. And I've spoken to a lot of them. I knew a lot of the students that went out there. When they did, they all started with the same thing, on all about environmental issues. Environmental issues is brought on by all these big corporations, and how we have to stop all these big corporations. And we have to look for groups that are not out there to demean people, to do the right thing, but to say the right thing. And a lot of groups have gone to into dealing with another thing that they have, where this is done by a group at the Dalhousie University, and they put this book out called Pathways of Reconciliation. And there is many books in the libraries today, including the history book we have of the Wet'suwet'en Nation. And you can start a dialogue yourself by just dealing with a lot of the historical things that are going to happen. You've got to know that this is history we're going through. You are part of history. Being that part of history, you start writing. You start writing and doing your own dialogue, speaking to one another. Many students have just written their own books during this COVID. It's helped them curb the long days and the lonely hours. And they have expressed to me that putting things down from pen to paper really helped them get through these long hours of trying to sit on a computer, doing your work, doing the virtual way. And suddenly they just focused on what was in their mind. And whatever is on their mind, they put it on a piece of paper. And when they read it again, they thought, wow, this is really how I feel. And by doing that, it's really curbed the hours. And the result you get is really, really rewarding when a book comes out of it. And this was written by a 21-year-old. And she was struggling. She wanted to help. She still helps today. And she just started by coming onto my Zoom. She met other students. Through meeting other students, she decided to join Climate Action. And by joining Climate Action, she puts her energies towards what can I do? And she's a script writer, so she could do that. She can write. That's how she helps. She helps other people by listening to them. She puts their thoughts onto paper, and that's how it starts. Some people also have just picked an elder, chose an elder, and helped that elder and started talking to that elder. Through that, they got stories they wrote about. It's helped them understand what the Indigenous people from an elder's side is all about. The elders were teaching them just how to, with many of the languages, how to speak to what nation that you're speaking. Every nation has their own ways, and I walk into a feast house on the West Coast versus a longhouse here. So I learn about that. You can go to Ganawagi, you can go to any nation near you, and you walk into Ganawagi, you start understanding what the people are, who the people are. You learn their language, you learn their traits, not just knowing that we're on their land, but you're also understanding the people themselves by introducing yourself, sitting down and talking with them. And that's one way you can help. It's not too far from here. And you start learning to understanding with Indigenous people by being with the Indigenous people. And that way they will show you their ways of why they are fighting for what they have. And it goes hundreds of years back, and they've got all the books in the library at Ganawagi to show what they've done on the East Coast versus what we do on the West Coast. Libraries, universities, everything is very helpful. Organizations, this is how they start. By anything that you need, you learn. When you're in the university, go to a library to get. The same thing with an organization. Who's the best one? Pick up a newspaper, and you will find out exactly what is going on today. And other than the news and whatnot, the newspapers sure hold a lot of what organizations are there that are stronger than others, who do a lot of work, who are out there every day and telling the stories, writing the stories, and talking about them, and dealing and with not doing it in an angry way, just doing it in a way that is helpful to others, that others can really understand it. The youth today this is very important for you to understand that this is a crucial time, but it's a time for you. So when I say I have a talk to give in October, it's going to be an important talk because the people I'm talking to are the future RCMP in Winnipeg. They're going to go into the first, when they graduate, and go into becoming an RCMP. My words to them is going to be, I'd like to see them make a difference and show the old guys exactly how to do it, how to take the hate and how to take everything else from them, for them to show a difference of how they can handle versus how it's being handled today. How they deal with systemic racism, how they deal with how they treat different races in this country. Indigenous is just not the Indigenous people as we know. It's Black Lives Matter. How you are dealing with everybody, how you're taking this into your heart, taking the knowledge into it. And with you will make a difference because you're the 8th generation. The 8th generation is going to make that impactful of a difference. And it's got to start with somebody. It might as well start with you at your age. 21 to 30 right now, when they start training to be an RCMP, I said, you have to go back to, I know that some of you got uncles in the past or in your family that has been one, how they've handled it, how good were they. Make sure you're just going to make a different one, not what's out there today. If it doesn't start from you, it'll never get better. You'll only be doing yourself a lot more harm. And in the future, somebody has to do something now and be resilient to all of the atrocities that the older ones are doing, and it might as well be you. I have a lot of things that I've written down that I will be saying to the RCMP. I was invited by an instructor who was on my webinar, and he is 23 years of an RCMP, and from there he went into, he's teaching it now, and he was the one that holds all them to be putting the badge onto them. So this is the audience that I will be talking to, and it's going to be a very important day for me to really carefully choose my words of what I would say.
Thanks, Marlene. And so what I would add to that actually is that folks listening should also do their due diligence to understand how the legacy of settler colonialism is very complex. It's being in solidarity with the Wet'suwet'en people is not just an act of performative activism. It's material contributions both to people in your community that are Indigenous, as well as the actual, on the front lines struggles. We also have, the prison industrial complex that folks should really get to understand, and how, Black and Indigenous people have historically been overrepresented in the prison system. We also have, by and for Indigenous media. So there's Real People's Media, for example, that is in Ontario, and they basically do their own reporting. Financially contributing to those kind of media outlets is another great way to ensure that those voices are upheld, and it's not just, students or activists that are speaking about this, but the people that are at the front lines that are being affected, that actually have the ability to be heard. I'd like to encourage anyone else who has questions to comment in the chat. If not, we might wrap up unless you have any further comments, Marlene.
Okay, that sounds great. Well, the organizations, like you say, in the media, I've learned in this last 2 years with media that the media themselves are a target, and not just with Black versus Indigenous. The media itself was a huge target. When they were with us in Smithers, BC, they were treated just as poorly as us. They were thrown to the ground. Their cameras were destroyed and picked on. Same way as they were in the United States. One got destroyed, lost her eye. That was on my webinar, talking and how she lost one eye to a rubber bullet. And the media, I speak out, and I've had 7 journalists coming onto my webinar, speaking just about basically on that, how they are treated and how they are now dealing with issues of just being journalists. And journalism is very important. It's very important for them to write the stories and get the word out there. And they're being targeted because they are the ones out helping us. That puts a big mind to me that anyone is to help us will have that same treatment. It is, I mentioned to many journalists how important it was for them. I just love the work that they do. And as I said 2 weeks ago, I had a big conference with over 20 journalists, and to letting them know that we are still out here working, and we're just letting our hereditary chiefs know we've not forgotten them.
Thank you. And for those inquiring about Marlene's weekly webinars, you can email marlenesolidarittywebinars@gmail.com, and you can ask to be added to the listserv, and you'll receive a Zoom link and password. Is there anything else you'd like to close today's teach-in with?
I would like to just close by saying I really thank the ones that have come out and shown, that the respect that you have to come out, to take the time to listen to what's available there for you. And also the people who put the hard work into putting these shows together. It's number one is to make sure that this virtual world of ours is all we have, and how hard it is we know to deal with it every day. We have to take the time to listen and to talk. I know that at this time of the night, people are talked out, zoomed out. There's many ways of going through the Zoom fatigue, and it's okay. If I ever see any of you one day, I will make you panic and make that all feel better, even you, Gal. Thank you ever so much. I think it was a great way to chat with you guys. Like on my Facebook, I say, you never panic, because there's always panic.
That's awesome. So ASFA Concordia, as well as QPIRG, and I'm pretty sure CSU might repost it as well. We'll be pinning some of the resources that you've mentioned today, as well as our own compilation of resources. You can hit us up on social media. QPIRG Concordia has a very defunct Instagram that I'm trying to rev up, but ASFA has something ready to go.
Concordia is a place before the COVID hit. I was been there at the Hall building regular. If I'm not catering there, I'm talking. If I'm not talking, I'm seeing the students. If I'm not seeing the students, I'm eating there. If I'm not eating there, I'm doing something there. And I really miss it. I miss the students. I miss the interaction and all the things that Concordia has. And thank you ever so much, Gal, for all of your hard work. And we'll have to do this again.
Yep. Hit up ASFA Concordia at ASFA Concordia, all one word, or CSU Montreal, CSU MTL, or QPIRG Concordia at QPIRG Concordia, and Sustainable Concordia as well.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye.